Hey everybody, today I have a story that I think is really cool and it's got some hidden vocabulary in there, but more importantly, it's called Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. Now, before you read, my goal for you today is think about what's going to happen in the story. And we've talked about that, and that is called making predictions. You can use pictures to make predictions, you can use the words to make predictions. So let's get reading. It's one of my favorite books. Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. Maybe he's an enchantress. We'll find out. Sylvester Duncan lived with his mother and father at Acorn Road in Oatsdale. One of his hobbies was collecting pebbles of unusual shape and color. On a rainy Saturday during vacation, he found a quite extraordinary pebble. It was flaming red, shiny and perfectly round, just like a marble. As he was studying this remarkable pebble, he began to shiver, and tremble, probably from excitement, and the rain felt cold on his back. "I wish it would stop raining," he said. To his great surprise, the rain stopped. It didn't stop sudden or gradually as rains usually do. It ceased. That means it stopped right away. The drops vanished in the air on the way down. The clouds disappeared. Everything was dry, and the sun was shining. It was like the rain had never been there in the first place. Interesting. I wonder what caused it. Because if it's the name of the book, it might give you a hint. Let's find out. As he was crossing Strawberry Hill, thinking of the many, many things he could wish for, he was startled by a mean, hungry lion looking right at him. He was frightened. If he hadn't have been so frightened, he could have maybe made the lion disappear, or he could have wished himself safe at home. But he didn't. He could have wished that the lion turned into a butterfly, or a daisy, or a gnat. He could have wished for many things, but he panicked, and he didn't think carefully. "I wish I were a rock," he said, and he became a rock. The lion came bounding over, sniffed the rock 100 times, walked around and around and around, and went away confused, perplexed, puzzled, and bewildered. That's exactly what the story says. I did not make up any of those vocabulary words right there. Which one of those words is missing, though, from our list in class? "I saw that little donkey as clear as day," thought the lion. "Maybe I'm going crazy," he muttered. Now, I want you to stop. There's the Sylvester, and suddenly he's a rock. But if you notice on the ground, the pebble's right there. But take a moment, think about what the problem is. What doesn't a rock have in order to reach that pebble? And there was Sylvester, a rock on Strawberry Hill, with the magic pebble lying right beside him on the ground. But he was unable to pick it up. "Oh, how I wish I were myself again," he thought. But nothing happened. He had to be touching the pebble in order to make the magic work. But there was nothing that could be done about it. His thoughts began to race like mad. He was scared and worried, and he felt hopeless because he was helpless. He imagined all the possibilities, and eventually he came to realize that the only chance of becoming himself again was for someone find the red pebble, and maybe sit on it, and then maybe he could make a wish. Someone would surely find the red pebble. It was so bright and shiny. But who on earth would wish for a rock to become a donkey? This chance would probably not happen. Sylvester fell asleep because he could do nothing else. But night came with many stars. So it's a pretty picture, but how's Sylvester feeling? Meanwhile, back at home, Mr. and Mrs. Duncan paced the floor, frantic with worry. Sylvester had never come home later than dinner. Where could he be? They stayed up all night, worried for him, wondering what happened. Thinking, well, I'm sure Sylvester will turn up in the morning. But he didn't. Of course, Mrs. Duncan cried a lot, and Mr. Duncan did his best to calm her. but they both wished that their dear son would be with them. "I will never yell at Sylvester again," said Mrs. Duncan, "no matter what he does."
Did she yell at him in the book?
At dawn, they went about inquiring of all the neighbors. What do you think inquiring means? What does it look like they're doing with this neighbor? They talked to all the children, the puppies, the kittens, the colts, the piglets. No one had seen Sylvester since the day before yesterday. They went to call the police. The police could not find their child. So I always like to ask, are things getting better or worse?
Worse.
Worse. You probably heard a little whisper there. Maybe the book is magical. I have a magic voice next to me.
Did he turn off that walk?
Don't let them think you're magic. Don't let them know you're here. All the dogs in Oatsdale went searching for him. They sniffed behind every rock and tree and blade of grass, in every nook and gully of the neighborhood and beyond, but found no scent of him. They sniffed the rock on Strawberry Hill, but it smelled like a rock. It didn't smell like Sylvester. How do you think Sylvester felt with those dogs sniffing him? But he was not able to say anything. Oh, that would be depressing. After a month, that means 30 days. Sylvester's a rock. After a month of searching the same places over and over again, and asking the same animals over and over again the same questions, Mr. and Mrs. Duncan did not know what to do anymore. They figured that something awful must have happened to him. They would probably never see Sylvester again. But all the while, he was right near their house, less than a mile away. They tried their best to be happy, to go about their usual ways. But their usual ways always included Sylvester, and they were always reminded of him. They were miserable. Life didn't matter to them anymore. Looking at those two pictures, can you think of 3 words that would describe how those parents are feeling right now? Bet you could probably think of more than 3. Night followed day after day, and night followed night after night, over and over again. Sylvester woke up on the hill less and less. When he was awake, he was just unhappy and hopeless, so he didn't like to be awake. He felt he would be a rock forever, tried to get used to it, and he went into an endless sleep. The days got colder. Fall came with the leaves changing color. Then the leaves fell, and the grass bent to the ground. Wow, look at this. So in all 4 seasons, this will rock a long time. Then it was winter. The winds blew this way and that. It snowed. Mostly the animals stayed indoors, living on the food that they had stored up. One day a wolf sat on the rock that was Sylvester and howled because he was hungry. Quick, what vocabulary word describes this? And no, it's not blizzard. And no, it's not blustery. Or is it gale? What could it be? Then the snows melted, the earth warmed up in the spring sun, and things budded. Leaves were on the trees again. Flowers showed their young faces. And there's good old Sylvester. But look carefully. What else do you notice that's there? The magic pebble. One day in May, Mr. Duncan insisted that his wife go with him on a picnic. Let's cheer up, he said. Let's try to live again and be happy even though Sylvester, our little angel, is no longer with us. They went to Strawberry Hill.
Why didn't name Strawberry?
Strawberries grow there. Mrs. Duncan sat down on the rock. the warmth of his own mother sitting on him woke Sylvester up from his deep winter sleep. He wanted to shout, "Mother, Father, it's me, Sylvester, I'm right here!" But he couldn't talk. He had no voice. He was just a rock. Could you imagine your parents sitting on you to wake you up? I know some of you don't like to wake up for school. I bet some of your parents have sat on you. I've sat on my kids. Mr. Duncan walked aimlessly about, while Mrs. Duncan set out the picnic food on the rock. Alfalfa sandwiches, pickled oats, sassafras salad, Timothy compote. Suddenly, Mr. Duncan saw the red pebble. "What a fantastic pebble," he said. "Sylvester would have loved this for his collection." And he put the pebble on the rock. Now, before I turn the page, what's touching him? They sat down to eat. Sylvester was now as wide awake as a donkey that a rock could possibly be. Mrs. Duncan said. "You know," she said, I feel like the strangest feeling that Sylvester is alive and really close by." I am, Sylvester wanted to shout, but he couldn't. If only he had realized that the pebble resting on his back was the magic pebble. Let me keep this surprised. "Oh, how I wish he were here on this lovely May day," said Mrs. Duncan. Mr. Duncan looked sadly at the ground. "Don't you wish for it too, Father?" she said, and he looked at her. And he agreed. They looked at each other and with great sorrow. But then that made Sylvester think. "I wish I were myself again. I wish I were myself again," thought Sylvester. And in less than a blink, he was. You can imagine the scene that followed. The embraces, the hugging, the kisses, the questions, the answers, the loving looks, and the fond exclamations. So before we had the parents look sad, miserable, dejected, depressed, despondent. But now look. Which words do we know that would describe them? Overjoyed's too easily. What's the next one?
I remember that one, so I don't read it. I haven't read this in so long, just looking at it.
When they eventually calmed down a bit and had gotten home, Mr. Duncan put the magic pebble in an iron safe. Someday they might want to make a wish and use it, but really for now, they had all that they could wish for, and they had all that they wanted. So through this whole story, after Sylvester went missing, what was the one thing that they all wanted? Now, I have a question for you. If you had a magic pebble, what would you wish for? I wish that I would not be interrupted during story time!